oriented at, let's say, people in charge, right? Or towards the powers that be. So a kind of a more instrumental vision. Now, the key issue here, to me, of course, was that this model doesn't really broaden anything, because you are forced to position yourself in either one, and you are forced to accept the legitimacy of the fourfold model. I don't do that. I do not consider myself a professional sociologist in this sense. I mean, I am by profession a sociologist, but in this sense, I am not a professional, not a critical. I don't want to be a dictator. Let's say I don't want to be victimized by the blackmail of this model, because that's what this is.
Did you say blackmail?
Yes, I did. You see, I don't want to be. It's not up to others to tell me where I am to be situated as a sociologist, particularly not because I argue that for the whole of sociology, from a professional point of view, not from a scholarly point of view, from a professional point of view, you are to defend sociology as such. Now, in terms of subject areas, and indeed, actually, in terms of theoretical perspectives, it's something else. You see, if somebody says, "Well, I'm a Marxist sociologist," that's fine with me. Are you with me? That's fine with me. I may not be a Marxist sociologist. That is something else. But that's fine with me. That is a particular perspective. Whether or not I am is not something that you can know at this moment unless you've read some of my work. See? So that is one of the issues. See? And furthermore, and that was actually one of my earliest concerns until he came up with his model, was of course the notion that the idea, I should say, that the notion of public sociology invokes the notion that there is something called a non-public sociology, which indeed I find striking, and which indeed is what Burroway originally started his discussions with. And he said that in Stratford. He said, when I talk in Africa, people look at me like, can there be a non-public sociology? What are you talking about? So there is a very strong admission of the complete lack of any kind of epistemology in this model. In fact, to even use the word epistemology in this context, I think should only arouse laughter. What is it then that he's about? This is public sociology. This particular agenda of public sociology is indeed nothing but a thinly veiled introduction of sociological Marxism. I noticed, again, that it may have been online. Oh, now I know where it was. In Wikipedia. In Wikipedia, until a couple of hours ago, Michael Burroway was introduced as a Marxist sociologist. That is not true. He is not a Marxist sociologist. He is a sociological Marxist. There is a huge distinction between the two. And actually, I changed it, of course. I do a lot online. I do a lot of public work. I cannot help myself. What do? You got to do something. Come on. See? And I changed it to sociological Marxist. There's a huge difference. And actually, people who are acquainted with Marxism should know this. For instance, in criminology, it's the same. People like Jacques Jan and so on wrote about that too. Say, you cannot even talk about a Marxist criminology. There's only Marxism. To even use the term Marxist criminology is to be non-Marxist, And indeed, Burroway uses this too. Now this is a side issue perhaps, but it is not a side issue to the extent that indeed he is a sociological Marxist. Has written quite a lot about that actually, a couple of key articles. Therefore, I also argue that public sociology such as it exists now, or such as it was introduced, is a way, a particular methodology, you could say, to introduce leftist politics into sociology. Now, I should argue, should emphasize that to me, the leftism of the politics is not, I don't care about it. You know what I mean? That to me is incidental. If somebody had come up with, private sociology, to introduce rightist politics into sociology, I would have had the same problem with it as well. Although sadly, I can tell you now, in terms of the reception of my criticisms, that is not the case. That is probably the only thing sadder than the fact, for me personally, than that I am not understood or misunderstood or misconstrued, is the support I get from some people who come up to me and tell me that they like what I'm doing and then tell me why. Because regrettably, a number of these people are right-wing, are conservative. This is very, very striking. It's only happened to me I shouldn't say a lot or some, it's probably happened only a few times, but it is so shocking to me that I think, gee, no, that's not what I argue. Right? Furthermore, it is very sad because it totally misses the point, you know what I mean? It just totally misses it. But I've had that response, so I have to admit that. And again, like I said, look at his writings in the specialized literature. Michael Burry writes, public sociology is an integral part of the project of sociological socialism. I don't cook this up, right? He wrote this. And it has to be accountable, public sociology has to be accountable to some such vision of democratic socialism. So you see, in the safe confines of his fellow Marxists, he admits what is going on, or what he's trying to have go on, and sadly that is not always picked up on, or rather, sadly, in the context of other discourses, it is presented in a more general fashion. Another development that I thought was very striking was the fact that public sociology nowadays is referred to as public sociologies. Meaning, there can be more than one version. I think this is just purely demonic, right? It's like, do I now have to, it's again a form of blackmail. Now you have to consider one of these versions. I don't buy into that at all. It just leads to this perspective that, you know, well, you can also be included if this and that and so on and so forth. This actually, in my case, I don't want to make it personal, but I can only speak from some experiences that I had, led this to this ridiculization of my work by some people, because, for instance, a lot of my work, I come in the newspapers quite regularly. You know, like I contribute my work to like discussions in the news, because I've been working a lot on terrorism and counterterrorism. So, you know, like after the July, actually the most interesting case for me, which I find this very, very exciting to do this, of course, was actually after the July bombings in London. I did something like 18 or 19 television, radio, and newspaper interviews. And so obviously in the ASA you can report that, you know, in the news, blah, blah, blah. And somebody said, look, he is against public sociology, but this is being public sociology. At some point in the ASA, it was even discussed teaching. That's the first effort of public sociology. Yeah, listen, you see, if that is not blackmail, I don't know what is. It's like, you know, well, this is public sociology too. What is the strategic part of it? The strategic part of it is this. Do you like teaching? Of course. Do you value teaching? Of course. Do you value bringing your work outside the academia? Of course. Well then, now you should also accept politics into sociology. That's, of course, what the goal is. Therefore, I say, this has nothing to do with bringing in a plurality of different visions. It has everything to do with legitimizing one particularistic political perspective. That is without a public is something that I don't go into, but you see, in the discussion on public sociology, it is still not clear whether that public actually is an adjective or a noun. Have you ever noticed that? Public sociology, is it public, adjective, noun? There is some discussion on that. I already talked about, this is one of the issues where I said there is no real debate about it. There is also no real debate in public sociology. These resolutions were passed without there being any discussion on these issues. You see, to me, it would have been much better, and it would have been much truer to the self-stated objectives if they had said, you know what, let's have a discussion about the war in Iraq. Nothing. Here's a resolution, yes, no. For, against. That's it. There was no airing of, what did John Dewey say? Majority rule, just as majority rule, is foolish, it's stupid. The means by which majority rule becomes to be a majority rule is what counts. The more important thing is the antecedent debate, modification of opinions, and so on. So it is that kind of a pragmatist view that I would accept, and that actually I might accept on some limited amount of issues in sociology. I probably have a problem with some of the range of issues that could be discussed. Good. Now let's do this, the final part of the talk. There's still a few minutes, right?